today. I'm Dale Bailey, Tumuaki, Chief Executive of the SpringBoard Trust, and I'll be hosting this morning. I'll just get us underway with karakia. Tutoa mai I runga, tutoa mai I rauro, tutoa mai I roto, tutoa mai I waho, kia tau ai te mauritu, te mauri ora ki te katoa, haumi e, hui e, tai ki e. Really lovely to have so many of our colleagues and friends joining us today. It'd be really great if you pop in the chat function where you're calling in from this morning. We've got registrations from across the motu. It's really lovely to see such a strong interest in our webinar this morning. This Leaders for Education webinar is all about connecting and learning from our network, both school leaders, our volunteers of SpringBoard and partners. It's a wonderful dialogue of joining people from across the country. I can see, so we've got, wow, we're getting so many. We've got Auckland, Tamaki Makaurau, really lovely to see, Snells Beach, Willow Park. Oh, Centro Otago, lovely to have you join us this morning. Christchurch, Taupiri, the Hobbiton area. Wow, we've got Middle Earth joining us this morning. Isn't that amazing? Wairarapa, Nelson. It's so great to see people from all over joining us. We really want this to be an experience of talking about effective leadership and navigating uncertainty and how people have done that successfully. And we've got some great panelists this morning to share that with us. You will be recording this workshop webinar, and we'll be popping it up on our page next week sometime. You can use the chat function to, as you are now, letting us know where you're from, Island Bay, Hamilton. Brilliant to share that. If you have any comments, put it in there. You can ask questions using the Q&A button. And if you like someone else's question, you just tick that thumbs up and it'll upvote it so it gets higher so that we might get that question asked. That's really great. We'll crack on with it now. So thank you very much. I'm calling in from Onehunga here at the SpringBoard office in Tamaki Makaurau. And it's a pretty nice morning here in Auckland. Our speakers today, wow, we're great to have these two wonderful wahine, and it's really great for me firstly to introduce Billie-Jean Potaka-Ayton, who's principal at Kaiti School in the Tairāwhiti. She's been a principal there for 15 years and has brought the school around from a decade of roll decline. In 2009, it was 130 students. Today, it's 420. And she credits her leadership style to her grandparents, who were so instrumental in her early life and education. Billie-Jean was part of the first cohort of principals to complete the SpringBoard Trust Strategic Leadership for Principals program in Tairāwhiti in 2016. She's a member of the Aero Principals Group and a leadership partner. She was a recipient of the Will Fisher Award in 2019. Her travel included visiting schools in Hawaii and Los Angeles and a week-long program at Harvard University on leadership. And we're really pleased to say she's also a member of the SpringBoard Trust team as on our board. Welcome, Billie-Jean.
Oh, kia ora Dale, ngā mihi nui kia koutou I tēnei ata. He rangi mokopuna tēnei ki te Tairāwhiti. It's a beautiful day here in te Tairāwhiti. Mai maketu ki Tongariro, ko Nongataha te maunga, ko Kaituna te awa, ko te aroa te waka, ko Ngāti Whakaue te iwi, ko Billie-Jean Potaka-Ayton tōku ingoa, he Tumuaki ahau ki te kura o Puhi Kaiti.
Kia ora, Billie-Jean.
Would you like me to carry on, Dale?
No, I'm going to introduce Melissa first and then come back to you. Melissa Clark-Reynolds. Welcome, Melissa. Melissa is an officer of the New Zealand Order of Merit and became a futurist and professional director after 25 years' experience as a technology entrepreneur and CEO in a number of technology companies. She's a professional director sitting on numerous boards. Melissa works with companies to understand the future and become more resilient while shaping the kind of world they want. She has a particular focus on sustainable business models and decarbonisation. Melissa received the Order of New Zealand Merit, Officer of the Order of New Zealand Merit for services to technology in 2015. She is a sought-after speaker on what's coming next, new technologies, and how we navigate complexity and uncertain futures. Kia ora, Melissa, welcome.
Kia ora, atamari e mai tātou mihi nui ki a koutou. No whanganui a tara ahau kei tangita keo te kāinga i nei. So I'm Melissa. I live on the top of Mount Victoria, right at the very top. It's known as Tangita Keo. It's the place that the taniwha, that is this mountain where her spirit left her body. And I always feel quite privileged to live somewhere that is so sacred, really. So I'm looking forward to talking today. Yeah, my family, you can see from my colouring, my family come from the north. And my first ancestor to come to Wellington came in the early 1850s and was the person who used to row out and guide ships through the reef. So I come from about 1,000 years of seafaring people. So I think that navigating the future makes sense for me. I come from this line of navigators. Kia ora.
Melissa, that's great. Thank you so much for introducing yourself as well. Okay, Billie-Jean, we're going to hand over to you.
Oh, ka pai, ka pai. So yeah, happy to share with you what seems to work for me here in my setting at Kaiti School. With 16 weather events in 2023 and the recent changes in the political landscape that may impact our communities, we really have to be prepared for all kinds of weather. So our school, Kaiti School, is a growing school of 430 pupils here in Gisborne. We have 10 bilingual and 9 English medium learning spaces with a staff of over 50. Our role is predominantly Māori, with also a large percentage of Tongan students who attend Kaiti. You know, so the first suggestion is up on the screen. If Andrew, could you put the screen up, please?
Certainly, I'll do that now for you, Billie-Jean.
Thank you. So there it is up the top there, mahia te mahi, which really means just get on with it. Don't dwell on what has happened. There is work to be done. Move forward. You know, we want to create that sense of normal every day in our kura. And when things out there in the community and the wider community are really messy, school needs to be normal for our tamariki in the everyday. The other suggestion to the right, ko tātou ko Kaiti, that means essentially this is us, this is Kaiti. And by this I mean we need to focus on here, on our kids, on our teachers, on our parents. The answers and solutions to problems that we face in uncertain times are also here at school. So just want to share an example of that, and that's our attendance strategy. So a few years back, coming out of COVID, we were part of the regional attendance service. That service was not working for our school. Our referrals were being made but not followed up till 3 to 5 days later. And by then the kids had decided it was time to come back to school. So there wasn't really any urgency in that system. So we left that system, we withdrew from it, and we took on the service ourselves and appointed our own attendance kaiarahi. We found the funding. She was one of our mums, and she had a very good understanding of our neighbourhood and who's who. We trained her up, we took back control, we reset our attendance strategy, we found the solution, and our attendance now sits in the range of 90 to 94%. So 90% on a bad day, 94% most days. So ko tātou ko Kaiti, this is Kaiti. The solutions have to be here. Could we have the next slide, please, Andrew? I see my text boxes are all different font. Whakawhanaungatanga. So tangata's people. Whakawhanaungatanga is about connection to place and people. And in the context of our kura, we make sure that we are engaging positively and actively with all members of our community. People need to feel connected in order to thrive. And when things aren't good and things aren't happening, if they're not connected, that's when we have problems. So we check in on everyone, we involve them, we give them projects to work on. Most people know if you're getting a call from me, you're going to get a job to do. So we noticed that one group in our community seemed to be growing, and that was our nannies and our karawa, who are looking after their grandchildren full time, more so after the cyclone. So on Fridays, we have a Pakeke Friday where our nanny and karawa drop off their grandkids for kura and then join in on hauora programs that have been designed by our social services team. And this morning, our nanny and koros are jumping into our school vans and heading down to the Kiwa pools for aqua aerobics. Last Friday, they went to Maida 10 for breakfast and goal-setting talks around their mokos. So whānau mā, notice your whānau. They are part of us too. Love your community. Next slide, please, Andrew. Kei konei au, which is I am here. So by this, I mean myself. It's so important for me to be present, to be really here in my mind, my body, and my wairua, present and visible in this kura and this community. I live in this community. Our school is not in the office, so I need to make sure that I get out there, I get into classrooms, I'm outside at the end of the day when parents are leaving. Actually, pretty much, as you all know out there, we need to be everywhere. And it's not easy being in 5 places at once. And most days as leaders, we know this is our reality. So for me, I need to make sure that I have got personal well-being and the energy levels to be where I need to be every day. So kei konei au, I am here. Next slide, please, Andrew. Hi, so we had Ero visiting our kura this week, and I just said to Dale, gee, I'm not sure why I actually said I would do this kōrero this morning. They've just recently departed. We must have done a good job, though, because they left me with a present, which was really cool, and it was this beautiful puka called Mauri Ora. Hope you can see it there. And it's compiled by Alsop and Kupenga. Highly recommend it. It has a selection of whakatauki in it. And so moving forward in my presentation, I decided I'm actually going to share some of those whakatauki with you. So the first one is around purpose and koronga. So he mana ko te kaura I kore ai, wishing for crayfish won't bring it. And there's one of our year 7 students out at Whangara. They went on camp a couple of weeks ago and she caught some crayfish. And so having purpose means it looks at setting goals, having a plan, sharing the plan, making it happen, planning strategically with others, you know, allowing for little blips along the way, but getting back on track quickly so you don't lose that momentum. Resetting your plan is good, establishing your priorities and changing them if you have to, but making sure that you're moving it along and taking action. So, you know, after the cyclone, it was horrific, it was traumatic, but we still needed to move forward. We didn't want to lose all the good gains that we'd made before the cyclone. So keep trying. Koronga is to have purpose. Move to the next slide, please. Oho is to be motivated. So mauri tu mauri ora. An active soul is a healthy soul. Provide lots of opportunities for your students and kaiako that are motivating and exciting and outside. Too many of our kids are inside on devices, so get them outside. Encourage your tamariki to spend time in the taiao. We go out into the taiao to motivate our tamariki to take care of their place. A lot of them don't know how to look after their backyard, and that's something that we really value here at Kaiti, is making sure we look after what we have for future generations. Whatever your tamariki set out to do, make sure that your kaiako are doing it as well. So for the past 3 weeks, we have been studying navigation and voyaging. Whakatere waka. And so for the last couple of weeks, all of our classes at Te Koro Puhi Kaiti have been visiting the waka tairāwhiti and spending time on board the waka, learning the whakapapa of the waka. Mauri tu mauri ora, an active soul is a healthy soul. Move on. So here at Kaiti, we are all leaders. So mahi tahi is collaboration, and the word that we call collaboration at Kaiti is tāmirotanga. It's actually one of our school values. Those are our 4 pou there that you can see up on the screen. So really important when you're collaborating, that you're growing leaders in your school, that you're distributing leadership to many leaders who are all on board with the plan, who have that sparkle in their eye, who have the energy levels and the drive. And having many leaders in an organisation creates faster uplift for new ideas and innovation. Collaborate also with your community, really important. And for me, in my mind, my community is our local Te Tai Rāwhiti community, but also the wider community across the country as well. An example of this is, I know across the country we are all having difficulty finding teachers, to ensure that we have a workforce to front up every morning for our tamariki. So what we've done here is we've been probably working on this for about 3 years now. We've collaborated with iwi and with one of our tertiary providers, Raukawa. And in our kura, most of our teachers start out here as teacher aides. We find them, we hunt them down. Actually, most of them are our parents. We provide them with employment as a teacher aide. And over the course of the first 12 months, we tell them, you're going to be a great teacher. And they say no. The following year, they start study, and they study alongside their work commitments. So we pay them while they study. We give them 1 paid study day a week so that they can do their assignments during the day. They graduate and they move into the teaching profession. Another thing to know about kaiako, especially kaiako Māori, they will never put their hand up to say that they will take on a leadership mahi. They won't apply for leadership positions in your kura. And this is typical in Te Ao Māori. In Te Ao Māori, you are chosen. You are told that you're going to do the mahi. So that's what we do here. No one has ever said no to me when I've got them to come and have a kōrero with me and saying, hey, it's your time now to be a team leader. Or, hey, it's your time now to run the Touch Academy. They just do it. So that's really an important thing to know about our young kaiako Māori, is that you actually need to indicate to them that they are ready to go. My strength is not as an individual, but as a collective. E hara taku toa I te tuataki tahi, he tuataki tini. Let's move on to the next slide. Hiro whakamua is looking ahead, and this is another whakatauki from that wonderful book from the Education Review Office, Mauri Ora. Ko whaia te wahie, mō takurua ka mahia te kai mō te tau. If you look for firewood in winter, you will have plenty of food all year round. So making sure as a leader that you have prepared your kura for the season ahead, respond to lessons from the previous year. Climate change last year, obviously a big thing for us down here on the coast. An example of how we quickly pivoted and responded to that is that our sports programs really struggled last year because of the rain. The field was always wet. So we mobilised, we found some putia, some money, and we built a hard surface over the last holiday period so that our grass sports can train all season. So making sure that we're looking ahead, te ro whakamua. Moving on to the next slide. Final slide, miharo, wonder. When times are hard, remember to look beyond what you see immediately in front of you to the possibilities beyond. The clouds in the sky gather, but above them extends the Milky Way. E tūtaki ana ngā kapu o te rangi, kei ringa, tō mangoroa e kōpai pū ana. So making sure that, we are doing the do, mahia te mahi, every day, doing the hard yards, but making sure that we're looking beyond those hard yards to what's happening in the future. Nō reira, tēnā koutou katoa.
Kia ora, Billie-Jean, that was amazing, and thank you so much. I love the sharing of your thinking through the whakatauki, and that sense that you had of while things can be unsettled, you've got a sense of where you want to be, where you are journeying towards. So is that really important to you, that the strategy, the longer term vision gets you through the challenge of the day?
Absolutely, Dale. And you know, my thinking around being strategic came online when I did the SpringBoard Trust program. So thank you to you all, because that really mobilised me and the kura and our board, and really lifted us up. And we moved forward quite strategically from that point forward. So really important. People feel good when you see successful things happening all over the place.
Right at the very start, you said, you need to let go of the past, not worry too much about the past to get going and moving forward. Is that really hard in your journey? Have you found that hard to get people to get into that frame of mind?
Some of those experiences we faced, they have been really traumatic, and even I get triggered when I'm talking about them, But I've got a whole crew here of people that I'm here to look after Manaki, and so for me, I've got to be a good role model and say, yes, that did happen, but we're moving forward positively. The sun is shining today. We've got mahi to do. So at our school, we're busy every single week, and we do really big things. And then on Friday, that's gone. And then the message goes out on Sunday for the next week, and there's more big things happening the following week. So making sure that we're just moving forward all the time.
It seems from what you were sharing with us and seeing those lovely photos of those children that you draw very deeply from the place, Tairāwhiti, Gisborne, Kaiti, that you're really drawing inspiration in that journey. Is that right?
Absolutely. Our place is our people, as I said at the beginning, that we are really strongly connected to the land, to the whenua, and making sure that our children are learning to look after the whenua is something that we really hold dear. Some of our tamariki haven't been taught to look after their place. And so that's our job as educators, to bring that into our curriculum, to make sure that they really value that as young people growing up in this changing world.
That's awesome. Thanks very much. We'll come back to some questions, and I'll just make a plug for people to drop into the Q&A any questions they have. But we'll move now to Melissa. Melissa, over to you. Let's have your presentation.
Oh, kia ora. I suddenly feel very whakama about my ugly slides and my kind of Pākehā worldview, that I realized that I didn't even notice how much I'd put it in. So thank you. I could have listened to you all day, Billie-Jean. I work as a futurist these days, and part of it, I think, is that I've always been an outlier. And so I went off to university at 15. And part of why I went to university at 15 is that in the old days when I was a kid, 15 was the leaving age, and I'd had a pretty rough time at home, and I had enough funding to stay in school until I was 15. And so, my school pushed me through as fast as I could, so that I could finish my 7th form, as it was in those days, and go off to uni. And so I was always a little different than other people. And in my last year in high school, I was at this all-girls little country school. There were only 6 of us in my final year at school. And I was really good at maths and science, and I wanted to learn how to code. And it wasn't considered a girls' subject back then, which is the weirdest thing, right? So I got bused to the local boys' school. And it was a terrible experience as a little, imagine me 14, the only girl at an all-boys school. And but what was great about it was that I got this leap on a technology that, and we're talking here about 1979, right? So it's quite a long time ago. Got this leap on technology in a way that many of my peers, boys or girls, didn't have. And it really made me kind of always be thinking about, well, what's next? And so I ended up actually doing a degree in anthropology first up. And I did it as much as anything because I found the maths and the science so easy, and I found people so baffling. And then I went back later, having worked as an anthropologist, I went back later and did the maths and sciences again. But what I want to kind of think about is that there are always little kind of like messages from the future that are in the present. So me being an outlier learning to code is just the same perhaps as some kids in your school who might be the ones who are the dreamers or a little different, or the teachers who perhaps are thinking about different ways of doing things. And one of the lessons that I've learned from working as a futurist is that we've found that the people who know the most about a topic are the worst at predicting what the future of that topic is. And so whether it's an expert in, transportation, or it's an expert in computers, or it's an expert in the news, when they try to predict the future, they're the people who generally get it really wrong. And there's a great book I read many years ago called The Wisdom of Crowds. And again, there's a pile of research in this area that says if you get kind of 50 amateurs together and get them to bring all of their worldviews together. And so I love that kind of idea of, when we work as a collective, when we bring multiple brains to it, that came out in Billie-Jean's talk, that we all bring, kind of naku te raurau, I bring my food basket, you bring yours, and together we'll feed everyone. And that's the way that we know that people create futures. People create futures in collectives. They don't do it as individuals. And the people who are experts are generally wrong about whatever it is that they have a strong opinion about. I studied with this guy, Sahel Niatola, who's the world's leading Islamic futurist. And one of the things I loved about that was that it's very easy for us to get set in our particular views of time. And again, Tautoko, what you said there, Billie-Jean, about te tiro whakamoa, we have to, we think quite differently. If we're thinking into our Pākehā about the future, all of our language in English is that we look forward into the future. And what we do is we're almost looking at the backs of our children's heads. So our children are walking into the future, we're walking into the future, and we have this image almost of a kind of that we can will it into existence. And what I love when you think in te reo is the kind of te tira ki haere, that idea of looking back to see the future. And so in te reo, what we do is we walk backwards into the future. And what that means is that we're actually looking into the faces of our tipuna as we walk backwards. And I think that's quite interesting to think about these different orientations of time and how we can bring both of those orientations of time to play. And so this idea of the weight of history, and to me here, we can think about a weight being a bad thing, but I like to think about weight as being the thing that grounds us. So even when you're talking about getting out into taiao, what is it to actually have an embodied experience? What is it to be in a body that has history, that is in a body that has connection to place? And I like to think about this being a kind of almost like whakapapa, tikanga, our origin stories. They give us a sense of who we are. And then this idea of the push of the present is we're dealing with stuff that's in front of us every day. We've got that little push that it's all very well, I might want to have an embodied experience today. It might be lying in bed, but I've got to get up and I got to go do something. And I love that, mahia to mahi. That's that corner, right? The push of the present, mahia to mahi. I always think about these people as being the ringawera on the marae, so they're out the back, they're doing the work. Might be those Pakeke that you were talking about, the people actually turning up, getting stuff done. And sometimes what happens, I think almost about the pull of the future is like, you could think about it being matakite or the prophecy, but it could also be just momoia or dreaming, or even more. I often think about these people being like ngā weka, they're little sticky beaks, they're running around, they've got brilliant ideas, but doesn't mean they get much done. And in my experience, those people who are living out in the future, they can sometimes be a bit lonely because they've got big dreams, they can see big ideas, but actually those big dreams and big ideas don't happen unless you have the ringawera and you have the people who hold whakapapa, hold tikanga, and you need all three around this triangle for change to happen. And if we don't have all three, what you have is you have just the dreamers who are dreaming, or you have the people who are continuing to replicate the past, or you have the people who are just like, excuse my language, but so Kiwi, it's like we're just getting shit done, but we're not stopping to wonder whether it was the right shit. And we're so busy doing that we haven't taken that time. And again, just really, really that whakatauki, which I wrote down, he manako te kaura I koro ai. Like if we sit around and wait for, the crayfish won't bring it. And there's a similar one. I worked in Vietnam for quite a long time. And they basically say, a man sitting by the river with his mouth open, a chicken's not going to fly in. And it's the same sort of idea, you've actually got to set up a farm and go and grow your own chickens. You're not just going to sit there and wait for it to happen. But we need all three of these, and there isn't any one of them that is better than the other. They all have their positives and they all have their limitations, but when we do them together, we can really create the futures that we want. And I came across this woman a few years ago, and I really adore her work. Her name's Jennifer Garvey Berger. She started a company actually here in Paikakariki here in New Zealand and has taken it out to the world. They've got people, I think, from 140 countries or something. But what she's done is she's really looked at this idea of mind traps. So where do we fall into like repeated thinking that stops us from being able to really thrive in complexity? And so she talks about simple stories, that we like to find one solution. The number of meetings I go to where somebody goes, well, there's no silver bullet. And I'm like, no kidding, but this idea that somehow, we can come up with a very simple reason for something. My daughter walked home from work yesterday and some guys harassed her. She came home angry and sad, and I was kind of angry for her. And, we started having a conversation about it, and it was really easy, to sort of just come up with a simple solution. Like she was like, I wish I could have just told them to piss off, but it's actually not as simple as that. And so sometimes, we have to unpack it. And the reason I bring this up is that I remember that moment when under this government, they said they weren't going to fund consent education anymore. And a part of me just sort of shriveled up. And we were talking about it, and it was like, well, the story was that parents should be teaching consent, not teachers. And I thought, right there, that's a simple story. It's a simple story that we're not part of communities, that we're not part of whole beings, that there's somehow like one person in someone's life should be responsible. That's a simple story. We also have this thing where we want to be right. And, you see it all the time. It might be a fight with your partner, or it might be a kid who's annoying you, or it might be a colleague. And we kind of sometimes we just want to push home what our point of view is. And rightness really stops us from being able to actually deal with complexity. There's a flip side too, which I think is very common in New Zealand, which is that we have what's called a high sociability index in New Zealand. And what that basically is kind of Pākehā for we'd rather belong than be different. And so these things all might be contradictory, but as human beings, we're contradictory. So at times what we do is instead of holding the line where we really have like our gut is telling us that something's not right here, what we do is that we surrender our opinion, we fall in with the crowd. We think that it will just be easier if we don't speak up. But sometimes we've got that feeling in our gut and that tingling that kind of is like, I just need to ask a few more questions, or I just need to push a little harder so that I can really explore something new. But what can happen to us is we can see a crowd and the crowd all seems to agree with each other, and I'm the weirdo who doesn't. And what do? And I have a moment there where I have to choose, am I pushing because I want to be right, in which case that's not a good thing, or am I pushing because deep down in my body, I really think that there's more to explore, or I don't really understand what this decision is about. And when you get those ones, those are the ones where you need to push a little harder. We also, all know what it's like to feel like we want to have control of the world around us. And in uncertain futures, there is less and less control. When the government is changing policy, when we see our kids, maybe they're going to go without lunches now, it can really leave us feeling quite out of control. And this desire for control also means that we flounder a bit when we try to think about the complexity of a situation. And then the last one is ego, you know, and I love what you said about like in Te Ao Māori, people are chosen. They don't, you know, the kumara doesn't talk about how sweet it is. So, you know, we don't often kind of see Māori step up and say, yep, I'm going to take this one on. The downside of that is that as Pākehā, we go, yeah, I'm amazing. I can do it. I'll just like figure my way through. And they're both actually a problem. You know, we need everyone to be willing to lead. We need everyone's points of view in here. And when it becomes, I'll be a hero, that hero mentality also stops us from being able to really negotiate complexity. So what are some of the ways out of these? And basically what Jennifer says, and she's a PhD in psychology, what she says is that this is the human condition. It's not like it's just an individual failing. It's part of how our neurobiology is wired. And so what we need to do is we need to find ways of managing that. So maybe we could ask ourselves some questions. If we're getting to a simple solution, or we're trying to find a simple explanation for why do guys harass my daughter, or why does the government do this particular thing, maybe we need to look at what other stories might provide insights. Are there alternate futures? Are there multiple solutions? You know, I love like some of that de Bono work where we could maybe take on different points of view. Could we black hat the way that we're thinking about it? Could we think about it creatively? Are there other ways? I do strategic planning with iwi and with corporates, and I'll often ask them, well, if you asked a tuna, if you asked the eel what was needed, what would they say? Not in a Pākehā view, if you walk to the top of the mountain, you look down, what would you see? But what if we actually asked the mountain? What if we asked the mountain who's been there for thousands and thousands and thousands of years what they think the solution to this problem might be? So can we think about different points of view and come up with different stories for how to solve it? Can we listen to learn rather than listen to get my word in, right? Rather than where's the break where I can tell you my genius? Can we just genuinely sit and listen to what other people have to say with no interruption, without formulating my answer? And where can I ask myself, am I wrong about this? Like, I know we don't like these words right and wrong anymore, but actually we still use them in our brains. So can I ask myself, am I wrong? And what's the grain of truth and this other person's point of view that I'm really missing? Can we disagree to expand the solution step? And can we actually deepen our relationships through conflict? I think in New Zealand, we're concerned that conflict will break relationships, but actually being able to disagree makes me trust you more, because I know you're not just going to say yes to me. If I'm being an absolute idiot about something, I need to be able to trust my best friends that they're going to say, Mel, just pull your head in, you know? Actually, you're not right on this. And then we can explore what the options might be. But if you only agree with each other, well, what are you all there for? You know, you're not really bringing that kind of collective, collaborative thought. You're just yes people. And then the control one, when that desire for control, and again, it comes up in our bodies, how do we think about, well, what's the smallest experiment I might do? Or how can I get up and under someone else to help them to come up with a solution, instead of me thinking I've just got to like dampen everything down and make it all right? And then the last one on the ego one, which we all have, no matter what. You know, when I hear someone say he's got no ego, I'm like, well, everyone has ego. That's just part of how we are. Maybe the question to ourselves is like, who do I need to become in order to solve this? And then where's my next development edge? And the same for us as organizations. Where are our blind spots? Where do we need to develop as an organization to be able to solve the problem that is now in front of us? Because we're continually having new problems, new things that we need to face. And if we're not walking our own talk, right, the mahia te mahi, if we're not doing that, like, where are we developing? Where are we learning? And particularly in teaching, if we're not learners, how are we really going to be able to be teachers? So that's all I want to leave you from. I just want to leave you with these kind of last questions, like, how do we expand our ability to work with complexity? Where do we identify our blind spots and biases? How might we prepare for multiple futures and be really curious? And then my last question to you is, who do I need to be for my preferred future to come about? Nō reira, mihi nui kia koutou.
All right, Melissa, that was amazing, really interesting framing and some really good insights for us. You know, when you're so busy doing the doing, navigating, how do you create space for that visualization and thinking about an optimistic future?
I think sometimes you have to wallow in the misery. I know that's like not very, none of us likes to be miserable, but I actually think that when we paste over the misery, we actually prolong it. And so, last night when my daughter came home, I was so angry. And it was really good for us just to like stand around in the kitchen and swear and stamp and kind of go, patriarchy sucks. And I actually think you sort of got to do that sometimes. Sometimes it's okay to be angry that some of the programs that we know are making a difference to our mokopuna are going, or make a difference to our kōrero or to our young men. Like, we have to actually be prepared to stop and feel those feelings. Because if we paste over them, we're just building something on sand. So one is we have an embodied experience. So be angry, be sad. They're okay. And then you can put the optimism on the top. But if we just go straight to the optimism, I think we're kidding ourselves. So to me, that's an important part of it. The other one is just really tautoko what was said about get out into nature. I've gone back to ocean swimming after an 18-year break, and I sort of couldn't manage it with family. And my son bought me a wetsuit, and oh my God, like last winter, I swam through the winter, and this year I've been doing ocean races, and I'm really slow and I don't care. What I love is an hour in the sea where no one can talk to me. There are no cell phones. My phone doesn't ping a notification. I'm not listening to a podcast. I'm not reading anything. All I'm doing is counting to 3 and being in the moana. And I think that's also a really important thing. So coming back to that embodied experience, be angry, be sad, get some time on your own, go for a walk. Maybe it's a go for a walk. For me, it's also go for a walk with my best girlfriends, whine and bitch and moan. And then on top of that, we come to hope. So to me, that's it. Like, but don't paste over it. Like, there's a lot to be sad and angry about right now. Like, we don't teach our kids anything good too if we don't show them that those emotions are okay, and they come before optimism, or else the optimism's a lie.
I love that point about bringing others in, understanding their perspectives. It's so easy at the moment to create the other. These people are to blame for this and divide us. Do you have some practical tips of how you do that? Is that part of creating a open mindset and seeking to understand?
Yeah, I think even just a question, which is, tell me more about that. That is a very different question than, I think you're an idiot, right? Or, we may not have said that, but we may have started to argue with them about something. So tell me more about that. And then really give them space. And then maybe ask them, well, can you tell me a bit about how, like, you came up with that? Like, what's the origin of that idea? Why, what's your point of view on that? And really be willing to listen to it. Now, you may still not agree with it, but what you might find is that what's underneath it is the same concern that you have. So we might have the same concern about a family, or about what's going on, or about what people are wearing or not wearing, or, but if we stop and try and find out what's underneath, we might find common ground in the underneath, rather than, I might have a violent reaction to their solution. But if I can find a way that the definition of the problem is in common, then I can do that. I think, tell me more about that is my best one. And then the other one is, what if we looked at the same problem from a completely different point of view? What if we put ourselves in the point of view of, like, the mountain, or we put ourselves in the point of view of someone in 20 years looking back? So if we were, the kids who are in year 1, 20 years from now, what will they say to us? about what we did. And the nice thing about it is none of us can be right about that. So you've all got to think creatively about what a kid who's in year 1 might think in 20 years' time. I hope that helps.
That's great. Billie-Jean, do you have any thoughts about Melissa's presentation and ideas here?
You know, I had an experience a couple of weeks ago around perspective. I got a call from the ministry and they said, Koka means fire or teacher down here. The Minister of Education would like to come and visit you at school. And I said, are you really serious? Do you really want to bring her here? You know what I'm like. I'm going to blimmin' give her heaps. And they said, no, Koka, just let her come. And, and it was a really hard time because it was around Waitangi Day. So our staff were very, oh, gee, we don't want what's she going to come and tell us we have to do, Koka? So she turned up. And, we had that really negative mindset about what we thought was the right thing. And Erica came in and she spoke, and it was really, really good kōrero. And we found really good value in what she had to say. And we made connections with what she was thinking and where she was coming from. So what your kōrero around perspective and just sitting back and listening to other sides of the story, that happened to us a couple of weeks ago. And the teachers really, really enjoyed that time with her. And she actually did some of those things those little pointers you said, like, what do you mean by that? Tell me more. Those were the things that she was saying to our teachers. So she really was there to listen to the teachers.
Nice.
Yeah, that's great. Really encourage people to put some questions in the Q&A. And we've got one from Jane. Loving this kaupapa. Thank you both for sharing your stories. How do we share our work more widely, find the pockets of gold that are out there and break down the silos? What's your thoughts on that, Melissa?
Talk to each other. And we don't do it alone. I really love that, the ehara takatoa, pakatoki is one that I keep on my wall. He ehara takatoa, ite toa takatahi, he toa takatini. We do it together. And I think sometimes that's where the ego bit comes in, that we think, I've got to be a hero and solve it. And we just can't. So, the only way to break down silos is to reach out to someone. Reaching out breaks our own little paradigms too. So make a friend, call someone you don't know, get in touch with Billie-Jean and say, can I come visit? Like those things, they break us out. So I don't think you can break silos down any other way than actually doing the mahi and call, get on the phone.
Billie-Jean, this is a great question for you, isn't it? Because, you're so busy working in this core in the community. How do you have time to share out the pots of gold?
We work on the coast. The coast schools work very closely together, so we collaborate a lot. But I actually do a lot of reading. So I read across a range of like educational books, like the Education Gazette. I find is a real gem for finding good ideas that schools that are happening in other kura for me personally. So that's one way. But yeah, I don't know. The other thing too, dare I say it, is I also look at social media as another platform where you can find lots of good ideas about what's happening in other places. And it doesn't necessarily have to be in schools. It can be in companies. I'll go to a business meeting and then I'll think, gee, I could be actually doing something like that in school. And then I take that idea back to school, and then we add education into that thinking. So, yeah, for teachers and schools, good ideas don't always come from other schools.
That's great. We've got another question from Lene. Melissa, a lot of your kōrero about mind traps seems to become back to self-awareness. So as a leader, intentionally questioning your own views, truths, beliefs, and challenging those. I've been thinking recently that this is one of the keys to successful leadership. Do either of you have thoughts on the concept of self-awareness as a leader?
Yeah, cool. I see this one from Tony Boone there as well. It's almost word for word. And I've been listening to, thanks to reading Jennifer's book, I discovered Robert Keegan. I don't know if any of you know him. So, you know, I haven't studied any ed psych, but what I loved about that was this idea that I remember when, you know, that we continue to have development right through our adulthood. So there was all this sort of Piaget stuff around childhood development, but as adults, we continue to develop. And I've found this really useful as I sort of come into my cronehood, you know, like what is it now to be an older woman? What is it to be, you know, I'm a grandmother and you know, I'm going gray, and I realize now that young people look at me like an elder. It's kind of, I'm coming into that phase of my life. And I've been listening to a bunch of podcasts from Robert Keegan, and I thoroughly encourage you to read them, or to listen to the podcasts is easier than reading them, because the interviews are really good. But what I like is that he talks about, as adults, you know, we sort of go through this like socialized mind. And I see this, you know, when your teenager starts to turn out to be not a bad person to live with, or you know, my daughter came back from uni in her 20s, and she's much more considerate, and she thinks about what it is to be a member of society. And so he talks about that being like that kind of late adolescence, early adulthood, that you become more of a socialized human. And then he talks about people maybe in their late 20s through their 40s becoming self-authoring, and really starting to think about, you know, who do I want to be? What's the, you know, am I doing things like, should I steal a car? Like the socialized ones think perhaps, well, I won't steal the car because I might go to jail, you know, whereas the ones who are a bit more self-authoring might think about the other, and they might go, well, I'm not going to steal a car because that would be bad for the other person. They're quite different bits of adult development. And then finally, he talks about people becoming self-transforming, and not everybody gets there, obviously, but this real ability to interrogate the system and to kind of really wonder about, well, who do I actually want to be? I've fallen into being who I am. But maybe I can really start to wonder, which parts of myself do I want to be? Where do I want to develop? Do I have choice over the way I express my beingness? And so, yeah, I've just been thinking about that quite a lot lately. So I encourage you to listen to Robert Keegan's podcasts. I found them fascinating. And many of you probably studied educational psych, so it's new to me. Yeah, Billie-Jean, what do you think?
I think being the mother of teenagers is a good wake-up call for being self-aware. You know, like I dropped my girl off at Waikato a couple of weeks ago. She's staying at College Hall, which was the same place I stayed at, and I was saying, it's going to be like this and it's going to be like that. And she's like, Mum, that was 30 years ago. It's not going to be the same. Actually, it was the same. It still looks the same. But, you know, having teenagers and having family makes you self-aware every single day. You go home, they ask you questions. They're the most honest critics of what you've done that day, and they tell you the truth. They tell you exactly what they think. So we practice that little self-awareness, and I do that with my children and my husband as well. Every single day we look in that mirror and we just see that first person, but we also thinking about, okay, what else has happened? What have I done right? What have I done wrong? What do I need to do better tomorrow?
I'm going to ask you to both just sum up in a minute, but it seems to me that in this, as you navigate the stormy sea and the winds and the current and the waves coming at you in different directions, it's about that self-awareness, the openness, a sense of where you're heading, and have faith in yourself and the team that you're working with. That's what I've drawn from it. Billie-Jean, do you want to sum up what your thoughts are after this hour?
Sure. I actually just want to answer one of the questions that came through. It says, what is the role of middle leaders in supporting you to lead through times of uncertainty? Student agency is really important in our school. So our leaders go out into the school and ask kids what they think all the time, what they think about curriculum areas, what they think about their teacher. You know, a simple question is, does your teacher like you? How do you know? You know, those are the types of questions we ask our kids all the time. So yeah, I just thought if I could use my minute just to respond to that person. Thank you.
How about you, Melissa?
I'm going to come back to the whakatauki I kind of mentioned, which is, naku te raurau, no te raurau, ka ora ai te iwi. I don't think we do it on our own. I think you do have to have that self-awareness, and I think you have to bring that, but the curiosity about others, the willingness to be in community with others to solve things, I think that's how we do it. And particularly as things get more complex, no one person can have a full view of any situation. And it's probably always been true, but it's just something that we can really see now. So phone a friend, ask that question, really kind of tell me more about that. I think more wonder and less certainty.
Well, thank you both very much. It's been an awesome conversation and lots of incredibly interesting ideas. We're going to be popping into the chat now a very brief survey, and we'd really appreciate it. People could respond to that so that we can plan for future events and get some feedback. My feedback is it's been really interesting. What a fascinating conversation. We could spend the rest of the morning talking about these things. Thank you very much, Billie-Jean and Melissa. It's been awesome. Thank you to our support team behind the scenes. We've got a whole lot of group of people making this happen, and we're really proud of what we've been able to achieve. And we'll be having this webinar up on the SpringBoard website next week, so it can be shared and looked at again. I really very much appreciate the attendance today across the motu. Lovely to see where you'd come from. So I'll just close this out with karakia. Ka whakairea te tapu, kia wātea te ara, kia turiki whakataha ai, kia turiki whakataha ai, haumie hui e tai ki e. Thank you.